All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Isaac Yepes with the UTEP College Republicans, and we are here with Dave Rubin. He's become a titan for free speech, and he is one of the best, interviewers that there is out there. Work, get some help because you really need it, and you have the floor.
All right, cool. Well, thank you guys for doing this. If there's more people that I can't see, if you guys want to jump into those chairs right over there, I didn't realize I was going to be able to see you guys. So it's nice to actually talk to people I can see. I thought we were doing a one-way communication here. This is good. So I heard it's been an interesting day for you guys. Panel before me, I guess, got a little heated. I will be just yelling racist and bigot stuff at you for the hour. So let's see what happens here. So first off, what I think is very cool. I mean, look, the idea of what you're doing here right now, bridge the divide. I mean, that is what it's all about right now in this country. There is something particularly weird happening in America right now. And, we've always been partisan. You can look back at the founding fathers. The whole point of living in a democracy is that things are about the great arguments, that you will set an argument, you will lay out your logic, and you will fight it out in the public square and through the political system. There's something particularly weird about what's happening right now, which is that everything has gotten hyper partisan. And I've been going to colleges all over the place, and I have a bunch of travel coming up. And hopefully I can get down there. It sounds like we may make something happen for next October, so I can meet some of you guys in person. But what I'm finding is that for you guys, what's interesting is that you guys are the first ones that are growing up, not only in this partisan thing, which everyone went through, but you're growing up while we're all walking around with one of these things. And this thing is making us all crazy. It's making everyone absolutely crazy because all day long you can watch people fight and you can fight with people. And if someone has a thought, you can immediately tell them that your thoughts are better. And then you can troll them and you can have 18 anonymous accounts and you can fight with people all day. And it's starting to change the political discourse. Like at first, I think when everyone was doing the thing on social media, that's kind of where it existed. But through this election, and especially with what's going on with Trump and Twitter, it's like what happens on the digital side of things is now translating into real life. And when you see all that fighting online, I think what's interesting now is that you're also seeing it bleed into real life, in that I hear from people every day who are like, I used to be friends with someone and then I posted one of your clips or something else on Facebook, or I said what I think about something, and people are defriending me, people are blocking each other. I literally got an email, you guys can see that I tweeted a couple weeks ago, about a guy who now is basically getting divorced over politics after watching a clip of my show and then showing it to his wife. And we hear about this all the time. And of course, I don't want to blow any illusions, but every now and again, there's somebody online that doesn't like me, usually an animated, like a avatar of a fox or something. And people out there can be pretty mean. So bridging the divide, I love that, because that's what we have to do. And that's what I've tried to do with my show, is it's actually okay. Believe it or not, this is going to sound pretty controversial. It's okay to sit across from somebody that disagrees with you. Not only is it okay, it's what you're supposed to do. And this is the through line through anything else I'm going to say. It's particularly important for you guys because you've been brought up in an atmosphere where it hasn't been okay. You guys have been brought up in this thing where everyone just picks what news they think is true, right? In mainstream or online, if you go just mainstream, you pick the channel that conforms to your views. So if you're on the right, you go to Fox. If you're on the left, you go to MSNBC. And if you're just not that bright, you go to CNN. And everyone kind of picks it for themselves. And this is an inherent problem. And because you guys have been brought up in that, the onus is now on you. I think more than any other generation, to kind of fix this thing. And for those of you that know a little bit about me, I didn't support Trump. I did not like Hillary at all either. But my feeling now, I voted for Gary Johnson, and you guys should judge me as such. He's actually the first person that kind of turned me against marijuana. I'm very pro marijuana, but after watching this guy, I kind of realized that maybe he's smoking a little too much. And I like him, by the way. You know what I mean? Like, I like him. I'd love to hang out with him, and we can go smoke a joint and go skiing. That would be great. But like, anyway, I mention this because there's fertile ground right now because of Trump. I mean, think about what the world felt like leading up to Trump and leading up to the election and what it feels like now. And right now, doesn't it feel like there's incredible opportunity here? Now, we don't know which way this is all going to go, if this thing is going to be a horrible presidency or it's going to be a great presidency, or what's happening in Syria right now, or what's going on with Russia, or any of this stuff. We don't know anything about that, but it feels like people are more engaged than before. Now, there's a little bit of a catch-22 there because, as I like to say on the show, it's like a good government is one that you don't have to talk about a lot. Now, I know I'm talking to a lot of young conservatives and libertarians and Republicans, and I think you guys probably inherently get this. A limited government is good because it shouldn't have that much control over you. For the people that are upset about Trump, the answer is not to burn down the system and destroy the presidency and take down America with it. The answer is that you've got to limit the power that the government has over you, period. So that when it's your guy in power, he can't do that much, and you have to accept that that's the way it is. But that way, when it's the guy that you hate, if you think Trump is the next Hitler, which of course he's not, but if you think that, then the answer isn't, well, I didn't get the results that I wanted, so now I'm going to resist endlessly. And, you know, you can protest, or you can do all that stuff. But the point is that we should be scaling back the power that these people have over us. If I was to, maybe we'll do this when we do the Q&A in a little bit, but if I was to ask you guys, like, how many politicians are there that you really think are good people, who really you think want to change the system, who really want to do better for you and give you more liberty, the thing that should matter to you most, your right to control your life. I am not here to tell you how to live your life. There's a lot of people on the left right now. It's happening more on the left than on the right at the moment, but this flips every 20 years or so, that want to tell you how to live your life. And if you don't live it the way they want you to live it, you guys know, and I'm sure you've been hearing them all day, all the buzzwords they'll use against you and all the ways that they'll try to control you. I'm not here to try to control you. I'm pretty sure that whatever you guys are going to do in your life, you'll either do what you're supposed to do or not, but it's not for someone else to tell you to do. So the government basically should scale back. Once the government scales back a little bit, then it's up to you. Figure out what you believe and don't be afraid to say it. More than anything else, people ask me, what can I do? They're always like, you know, Dave, I dig what you're doing, and how can I help you? How can I help? And it's like, we need people like you guys to be willing to put your butts on the line. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just some guy that happens to be doing this. By the way, I'm actually having a great day today, just to get away from politics for a second. I'm in my childhood bedroom at my parents' house right now where I grew up, and I was in the basement earlier, and I found my childhood Millennium Falcon. So I don't know if that has much meaning to many. Okay, we got some smiles there. I found my and literally Han and Chewbacca were still in the cockpit. So I'm having a great day. But the point is that we've got to figure out a way to come together. But within that, you can argue about everything. Argument is what it's all about. So there's a couple things going on right now. So first off, I know you guys get this, like on the mainstream news stuff. The mainstream news is pretty terrible. It wasn't always this, but, you know, we've got this cable news thing that's just, you know, as I'm sure many of the speakers have talked about today, is just pouring garbage all day long, because you shouldn't have to have 24 hours worth of news. You guys have lives, right? You want to date, you want to get some food, you want to hang out, you want to play video games or whatever you're doing, right? And it's like, you should have a certain amount of time in your day to be engaged in what's going on. And it's one of the reasons why I'm really glad when you guys reach out to me, I saw that some other YouTubers were going to be there. Because YouTube and online media, it is replacing traditional media. And I would argue, you know, that forever, basically, mainstream was hot, you know, really up here. And then the online thing came and it was growing, and mainstream was crawling. And then basically on election night, they kind of got to parity. I feel like the influence of both of them got there. And in a lot of ways, you know, online media has taken over now. Now, of course, for a guy like me that does what I do, that's great. But what's interesting about that is, you know, anyone can get on YouTube. Anyone can create an account. Anyone can put on a shirt and a tie and sit at a desk and get a decent camera for $1,000 and make it seem like they're a professional or they went to school for this. I did go to school for poli-sci. I think I'm the only person that's ever used a poli-sci degree for politics. Hopefully some of you guys will. But what's happening is because anyone can get on this, the onus now is on you guys because you're slammed 1,000 different ways. You can go across the political gamut and find people on YouTube that are always gonna, you know, reinforce your views, or you can do what I think is healthier, and it's what I try to do, which is follow some channels and some people with some different views. And what's interesting to me is that I see people on the right being much more open to this concept right now. I suspect you guys are a little more open than, well, for example, I mean, I can give you a very real world example, which is that I go to colleges and talk a lot. I never get invited by progressive organizations or really any liberal organizations, even though I can give you a lot of liberal cred that I have that you guys would probably, some of you may disagree with me on some things, and that would be totally fine. But, you know, I'm for gay marriage. I married a dude. That's pretty convincing right there. I'm pro-choice. I'm for reforming the prison system. I'm for legalizing marijuana, both medicinally and recreationally. I'm for a strong public education system. I came out of the public education system. I went to State University of New York at Binghamton. And the list goes on and on. So you'd think that somebody that holds some of those beliefs would be really embraced by the left. And yet what I find is because I am talking about this authoritarian side of the left, and because I believe in free speech with virtually no exceptions other than a direct call to violence and things of that nature, I'm sort of being booted out of the left. And that's why I talk about classical liberalism so much, because classical liberalism, what real liberalism is, and I'm sure many of you have read John Stuart Mill and plenty of other people, but read On Liberty. It's a pretty quick read. And what you'll find is that the roots of liberalism, even if you consider yourselves conservatives or Republicans or whatever, the roots of real liberalism is live and let live. That's the point. We got to figure out how to be in a society together. And this is where, you know, we could spend 5 hours probably talking about the difference between what's a classical liberal and a libertarian. I believe there's a little more of a marketplace for the government to be involved in some things. But by the way, I've had many libertarians on my show, and I've had folks from the Ayn Rand Institute. And a couple weeks ago, I had Brian Kaplan, who's a professor over at George Mason University, who's an anarcho-capitalist who wants, you know, no government anywhere. But the point is, if we can agree on the basic stuff, if we can agree on free speech, we believe in free speech. We believe in pluralism, meaning we should have a society that shouldn't just be diverse ethnically and culturally, which we already have in America. We have an incredibly diverse country. And yes, it's not perfect. It is not perfect. We have a long history of doing, you know, things wrong and screwing things up and wars and all kinds of stuff. But it's a pretty great country. We can all in this country say what we want to do. All of you in that room came from people who had less than you probably have right now. Meaning I'm a third or fourth generation American. My great grandparents were the generation that came here on both sides, came with virtually nothing from Eastern Europe, worked really hard in factories and doing jobs that they didn't want to do so that their children could have a better lot in life. Then my grandparents basically lived through the Depression and had my grandpa on one side, you know, shared a room with 6 brothers and sisters. His father died when he was 2 years old. And we all have these things. And then guess what? What happened after that? My father then went to college, became middle class, and I grew up in a decent life that hopefully I'm able to build upon. And most of you have that story. Now, of course, there are exceptions to that story that, you know, the descendants of many black people in America came from slaves. So that's hugely different. And it's a whole other issue altogether. And of course, if you were Native American, it's different. But the bulk of us have partaken in the American dream. But the American dream isn't just about diversity of our skin and our culture and things of that nature. It's about diversity of thought. And that's the most important thing. So when people try to just categorize us as this is how we should view black people, this is how we should view white people or Muslim people or Asian people or whatever it is, this is the danger. This is the danger. I would only judge any of you on your thoughts. So I can just, from the guys that I can see right here, the guys and girls that I can see, I see an interesting ethnic mix of people. There's some different skin colors and all that stuff. But I would judge none of you as, oh, there's a black person, that's what he thinks. There's a white guy, that's what he thinks. There's a guy in a red shirt, that's what he thinks. That's insane. What you would do is you would judge people on what they say and what they do and what they think. Now, this principle, that's what can save us. That's what can bridge the divide. Because stop viewing everybody as, oh, he's a Democrat, so he's evil. He's a Republican, so he's evil or he's great or any of that stuff. If we judge based on individuality, and I know most of you guys know this, but we've got to get this concept to move forward in the country, that is what will free us. Live and let live, and build some bridges. So you know what? So be okay hearing some ideas that you don't like. So I've had people on my show, for example. I've had some people on my show that I think you guys are familiar with. A guy like Glenn Beck or Ben Shapiro or Dennis Prager, who as young Republicans, you guys probably agree with them on the bulk of stuff. Now I talk to them about gay marriage. Again, in my home where that's where I live my married life. In that home, I had Bishop Barron on from the Archdiocese of LA. This is a guy who, according to the Catholic Church, is against marriage. Now, I could have berated him for an hour, right? And that what would have that proven? And a lot of people emailed me after and said, you were too soft on him on gay marriage. And I thought, this is crazy. Like, do you expect me to sit with this guy and about halfway through, he's going to throw his frock off and be like, you know what? I thought about it. You're right. I give up years of Catholic school teaching, and that's it. I'm going to call the Pope, and we're down with the gays. Like, of course not. But what you can do is you can sit across from someone and say, you know what? We both live in this country. We both live in this country, and you may not want me to be married. Look, in my view on this one, we won. Gays can get married. So it was like, if you don't believe that and you have your set of beliefs, as long as you're not legislating against me, I can sit across from you. Now, you could argue that there was, sort of Mormon church money that went into legislating against Prop 8 and a whole bunch of other things. But the point is that we should all be okay with sitting with people that think differently of us. Abortion, which is perhaps the most toxic mess when you argue with people. It's like the idea that, people on the right will frame it that people on the left just hate babies and they just want everyone to have abortions. They all hate babies. And people on the left will make it seem like everyone on the right hates women and they want to control women's bodies and all those things. I mean, it's silly. Like, the answer is somewhere in between. And so the basic idea is that, give people a chance to explain their logic and hope that they'll do the same with you. It's funny because most of this stuff, we're talking politics here, and a lot of it just sounds like basic human psychology. Be okay with sitting across from somebody. And more than else, the thing that should bring us together on all of this stuff is relentlessly defend free speech. So for you guys in schools right now, I hear all kinds of things about, I joke about them all day long about these trigger warnings and safe spaces and all of this stuff. And of course, it's easy fodder for all of us to make fun of. But it really is dangerous stuff. You are at college right now, and in a couple of years, you will be out in that dreaded real world. And whether you like it or not, and I know you guys probably aren't the ones really into the trigger warnings and the safe space and all that, but whether you like it or not, when the real world hits, you're going to hear things you don't like. You might have a boss who says things that you don't like. You're going to meet people who actually are bigots. You're going to meet people who accidentally say something racist, and it doesn't mean that they themselves are racist. And at the same time, by the way, in your own life, you're allowed to be racist. We may not like it. It may not be, you're allowed not to like people. It's not an evolved way of living. But we have to respect each other as citizens, respect our right to be here. So I think for you guys, just be okay with hearing some other ideas. When they tell you that there's a trigger warning before a thing, and you might hear some words that offend you. Words don't offend anybody. Words, they can offend you, I suppose, but words only have power if you give them power. People can say awful things to you, but it only matters if you're the one that gets offended. And then, the next thing is that when you're offended by everything all the time and you have these trigger warnings and these safe spaces and all of this stuff, well, then what happens is you become so insular in your thinking that anything that deviates from your thinking is dangerous. And that is actually what's dangerous, because none of us have all the answers. So especially at college, you are at college right now. The whole point is to learn, to figure out what you think, to figure out what political philosophies do I believe in, what economic policies do I believe in. And on top of that, you also got to figure out how to be a person too, right? I wish you guys are lucky in a lot of ways. I smoked a ton of pot in college and I wasn't paying attention to any of this stuff. And I think it's so cool when I go to schools now, and it's like, holy cow, there are 19-year-olds that are paying attention to this stuff, that are woke to this stuff now. That's why I say that we need you guys. So I think another thing to sort of take with all of this is that it's really important to understand that not everyone's going to change the second you change. So this is somewhere where I wish my friends on the left, at least the ones that'll still talk to me, I wish that they would be a little more tolerant. So again, if you take an issue like gay marriage, like if you think about it, the left won, right? Like progressives and liberals all wanted gay marriage. I think it's a just cause. The Supreme Court defended it under equal protection under the law, that we should all be treated equally under the law. Okay. Now the thing is, if you immediately, let's say you meet someone tomorrow, let's say you're for gay marriage right now, and you meet someone tomorrow that's not for gay marriage, you can't expect everyone to change the second that you do. You got to give people a chance to change. So this is where, to me, the left was right on something. They were right on getting gay marriage to be passed. But you can't now turn and say, all right, well, everyone who doesn't believe in it this second is a homophobe or an evil person. Because you know what? Barack Obama ran as president, about 9 years ago, and he was not for gay marriage at the time. It wasn't until it culturally became relevant enough that he finally politically sort of had to say that he was for it. Now, maybe he privately was for it before that, but didn't feel like he wanted to spend the political capital. But if you guys remember, one of the reasons that he came out for it was because Joe Biden, God bless Joe Biden, he was on Meet the Press, and he sort of half-assedly said that we're going to pass it and that Obama's for it and that he was for it. And that kind of forced Obama's hand there. But my point is that when you get a win, so in this case, the left kind of got a win on gay marriage. Well, now you got to look at the right. You got to look at conservatives and libertarians and Republicans and be like, wow, we really did have a cultural win there. I mean, think about Trump for just a second. You can say all the things you want about him, but the guy, when he did his RNC speech, he talked about LGBTQ rights and got a standing ovation at the Republican convention. Then Peter Thiel, or I guess right before that, Peter Thiel, who I'm sure many of you guys know, he's the founder of PayPal, and he was one of the original investors in Facebook, and he's got a gajillion dollars. He went up there and said that he was proud to be an openly gay man and got applause from the Republicans. So when you win a fight, you got to kind of pat the people on the back on the other side when they say, okay, you've won this. Now, that doesn't mean that every Republican is okay with gay marriage. But again, we live in a pluralistic society, and I don't know of any place that's doing it any better. That's the thing. That's the most important thing, probably, is that we live in this great country where everyone still wants to come here. Before the election, all these, Lena Dunham and a couple of these other celebrities, I'm going to leave if Trump wins. Of course, they never leave, because no one really wants to leave. And really, if you think about it, has your life changed that much since the election? But that goes back to what I said before about just don't give these guys that much power over you. And I think if you guys are young Republicans, or you're libertarians or conservatives right now, I think you guys probably inherently get it. And the problem, and I think maybe the fight for you guys, is that a lot of this stuff doesn't get up culturally, right? So like if you watch a lot of the movies or a lot of what celebrities are saying and all of that stuff, it's the reverse of what you guys are fighting for, because it much more is about that collective thing, and it's about all of this social justice nonsense and intersectionality, and you guys are just kind of bludgeoned with all of that stuff. But the only way that most of us, the free-thinking people who truly want to bridge that divide, the only way we ever get close to that is being better than our intellectual opponents. There's a habit of everyone being like, oh, well, the other guy did it, so I'm going to do it too. And that's really, you just become the other guy then. You don't really win anything. And there's really, truly a way to win here, and I see it. I see people waking up all the time. I can't even open my emails anymore because I'm so slammed with the amount of people from all over the place. And by the way, not only in America, but this tide that we've all kind of been fighting about, this collective stuff and the SJW stuff and all that, it's happening all over the world. And if those of us that are reasonable in the center, that want to talk about freedom, that want to talk about liberty, that aren't afraid to talk about the doctrine of Islam, which can be that doesn't look at us as equals, and all of those things. If we don't talk about it as decent people, as non-bigoted people, as non-racist people, well, then who's going to come in and give easy answers? It's going to be the extremists. It's going to be the actual xenophobes. It's going to be the people with really bad intentions. So it's funny. It's like, in a certain way, I envy you guys, truly, because to be your age and in this thing where there's so much opportunity, and especially because any of you can get on YouTube and Twitter and anything and make something great and figure it out. You know, if for those of you that like my show, I mean, all I did was create an account, started doing a show, and eventually by saying what I think, enough people started paying attention to it. But any of you can do that. So I'm envious of that. And then at the same time, I know it's sort of scary in another way, because I see this with people that are in their 50s and 60s that are like, there's never been anything like this before. It's unknown. The future is always unknown, but now it feels like the very ground that we stand on is unknown. So I think the most important part is don't be afraid to talk to people who believe different things. Consistently challenge your own ideas. Do that all the time. My ideas are still evolving. I've evolved tremendously. You know, my core beliefs are the same. That doesn't mean you're flip-flopping every day. But if you hear people and you really judge them as individuals, you'll find that you can change too. And that's a beautiful thing. And more importantly than anything else in terms of the social part of this, when someone tells you they know everything, everyone on Twitter these days knows everything about everything, right? Like, look what happened with this Syria strike a couple days ago. Suddenly people who I know who couldn't tie their own shoes, who know nothing, who have never accomplished anything, who you know, just haven't really done anything, who don't really understand the inner workings of government or just anything, or certainly not geopolitical situations or any of that. Suddenly they're all experts on what we should do in Syria. And it's like that kind of thing. This is a huge problem. Like, be okay with not having an answer every time. The direct message that I'm putting up next Wednesday, that was what it's about, which is that it's okay to occasionally be like, you know, I don't know. I actually need some more information. And, you know, yeah, we're not going to be the hysterical side, right? Like when you open yourself up to that, you're not going to be the hysterical people. But I think that's how you can get people, by being real and honest and not giving them fake answers and all that good stuff. But I've gone for, I think, a little over a half hour here, and I'd love to take some questions instead of just me babbling this whole time. I'm getting a lot of nods there, but what do you guys got for me? Anything? I am totally open.
So they can talk right up. Anything.
Don't be shy, people. All right, here we go.
All righty.
There we go. What's up, man?
Hey, not too much. My name is Anthony. How you doing?
Good.
All right, I have a question. Now, what do you think about the nation? What we're going right now? Do you think that a lot of the division that we're having could cause unity, because people are tired of seeing the left fight, they're tired of seeing the right fight? So the average person, the normie, so to speak, we want to come to the center. Is that possible?
Yeah, I do think it's possible, and that's my only hope. Believe me, if I didn't think that, I would find something else to do. You know, like I wanted to be in the NBA. It's a little late for me now, but like if I didn't believe, I don't know why that was so funny. I still got some skills, but if I didn't believe that we could get some wins here, I wouldn't do this. But I know there's evidence of it. I see it now. Not only do I see it because of emails, but when I go out there and I go to schools and I meet guys and girls and I meet people like you, it's obvious to me. Because what's interesting here is as the two extremes have gone further, it's very obvious that both have. Now, for you guys that know me, you know I've tried to clean up the left a little bit more, and I think I've done a decent job of it, but obviously I lost a certain amount of people. Okay, I'm just one guy. But as the two sides go crazy, it becomes more and more obvious for a decent thinking person like you to go, you know what? This isn't how it's supposed to be. This isn't what the founders intended. This doesn't feel right as a human or as a college student or as a father or as a son or whatever it is. We've got to realize the whole point of living in a great society like we do is that you're going to meet people every day who believe different things. So what can bring us together in the middle? Again, the answer is liberty. It's on you, right in front of me, to do with your life as you see fit. And if we can all get around that the playing field, meaning we should have laws that make us all equal, but that doesn't mean the outcome's always going to be the same. Someone's always going to outwork you. Someone's always going to be smarter than you, or someone may be more connected than you, or whatever it is. But your life is yours. And I think that's how you build the center. It's not about, they've tricked us into thinking that, oh my God, yeah, every decision is somehow between a Democrat and a Republican. And by the way, they always get like 51% of the money goes to the Democrats one year and 49 the other way, and then it flips every 4 years. So guess what? The political debate is not between the Democrats and the Republicans. I'd love to see a strong libertarian party. I'd love to see a strong classical liberal party. And I think we can get there. And I totally hear you on the question. And I do believe that we can do it.
Thank you for the answer. Definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
All righty.
If anyone else has a question, we can just go right ahead. Don't be shy now.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, how's it going? Hey,
Well,
Alan, how are you?
I have a very important question.
Yes.
What did you think of Rogue One?
You know, it pains me to say this. First off, if I had done like an hour talk on Star Wars, that would have been a lot more entertaining. I did not love it. I did not love it. It was missing some of the magic of Star Wars that the other ones had. I don't know. You know, maybe I just need more Force in my life or something. But I didn't love it. So there was that whole controversy. Of course, you probably wrote about it, where the writers said that, you know, it was this band of what was it? Something, you know, it was this band of downtrodden people versus the white supremacist First Order. And it's like, nobody wants that. Even if that's what you wrote, you idiots have to say it. You know what I mean? Like, let us all take our imagination where it could go. But I don't know. It felt like it missed a little something for Star Wars. That being said, I would say that Force Awakens might be the second best all-time Star Wars movie. And apparently Last Jedi trailer is coming out next week.
Well, thanks for that. I completely disagree. I think Rogue One was far superior to Force Awakens, but yes.
I'll have you on the show sometime to do that.
But thanks for the answer. I'll let someone else come on now.
Got it. What do you got, guys? Don't be shy.
We got one more coming up.
Come on out.
We'll go out there.
Howdy, Dave.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. My name is James, and awesome having you discuss with us. So, as I'm a libertarian or classical liberal myself, and I like how you define these things. But what would you think would have been better for society and the gay community and the rest of society? Either gay marriage by the Supreme Court or having the individual states get rid of the whole licensing of marriage. And you would go to maybe your church or the people you care about, and that's where you would have your marriage recognized. And as far as the government is concerned, it would be like a civil contract between two business partners.
Yeah. So it's a great question, and the reason I like this question is it gets to the heart of something that I think is really interesting about bridging that divide, which is that as a liberal and a libertarian, depending on which way you view it, that if you're a liberal and you want the state to make people have equal rights, or if you're a libertarian and you want the state to get out of it, you still can come to the same conclusion ultimately, which is that two people can get married regardless of their gender. So that's a really important point there to get, that if you can get there, wherever there is, that we agree basically is the good place to get of equality, right? In this case, if you can get there and you view it because you want bigger government to tell people what to do, or you want smaller government to do it, that's pretty good. Now, I would argue that if we can get people to believe more so that it's a smaller government thing, that's great. In the specific answer to your question, you know, I had Glenn Beck on my show, and I've had a few other people that have argued that basically that if you would have just kicked it back to the states, that it would have got there. Now, first off, I sort of think that the issue, unfortunately, was holding the country hostage in a lot of ways because we were spending so much capital, so much political discussion on it. And as obviously, I'm a firm believer that we should treat all people equally. So if you happen to be straight, I don't know, if you're entitled to marry a woman and a woman's entitled to marry a woman, and it should be on, it's up to you. It's a contract between you and another person. So look, if at the end of the day, they had let it be a states' rights issue, and let's say 3 states, you know, slowly it was happening, by the way, right? Like something like 20 or maybe even 30 states eventually started going there. If that had kept consistently happening, because I do believe that justice usually wins out, and let's say 3 states were left, and let's say, I'm just picking, but let's say it was Alabama, Georgia and Florida, okay? Let's say they had said, you know what? It's a states' rights issue, and their constituents had voted on it, and they said no. Now, I personally would be against the decision that they made, but you can't just have principles when they're easy to have. You have to have them when they're hard to have. And what I would have argued for is not, at that point, is not that the federal government should come in and change it. It's that, unfortunately, in this case, if you're gay and you want to get married and you're in Florida, then maybe, move to New York or move to California or move to any of those other 47 states that I didn't mention. Now, I know that, again, that's hard, and it's sort of like when I've talked about the wedding cake situation, where I wouldn't force the baker to do it. You have Randy Barnett. If you watch one of my episodes, I had Randy Barnett on, who's a constitutional law professor at Georgetown, and what he talked about is your foot vote, that you have the ability as a free citizen in a free society, if you don't like what's happening in your community or in your state, the beauty of states' rights is that move to another state. So if you live where I live in California and you don't want to be taxed up the wazoo the way we are in California, then move to Florida. Take your goodness that you bring to your community, your work, your family, your commitment, and that's what personal responsibility is about. So in a roundabout way, what I'm saying here is I wouldn't have been thrilled had they done it that way. And by the way, I know that obviously the Supreme Court decision is controversial because people say that it wasn't equal protection under the law. I don't see how it's not. The decision makes sense to me, and obviously I'm happy with the outcome. But ultimately, you got to have principles when they're tough to have.
How do you feel about the civil contracts idea? I know they were trying to push it in Kentucky and maybe a few other states.
Yeah, I would be fine with that as long as the rights that are granted, as long as the tax code would then make equal, and the things of that nature, as long as we're equal, and the law is not treating anyone special or excluding people from tax benefits and hospital visits and all of those things, then I don't really care what you call it or any of that stuff. If you wanted it to be done by a justice of the peace or by whatever faith, preacher of whatever faith you are, any of that, that's all fine. The point is that any of us should be allowed as people who are in charge of our own mind and our own bodies, you should be allowed to engage in the same contract with whoever you love or whoever you want to enter a contract with that anyone else could be. So again, this is where it's a beautiful thing because liberals and libertarians were really fighting for the same thing and not even realizing it, I think, the whole time.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thank you.
This is the last question. Sadly, we are just about out of time.
All right, let's finish strong here, people.
Come on, Nick, no pressure.
Hello.
All right, here we go.
So, I mean, you could call me Nicholas or you could call me Anthony. Preferably, I'm wanting to go by Anthony a little bit. But my question would be is, it's very subjective, so I had to kind of think about it a little bit. But how would you suggest, this is discarding your fan base, because again, what I'm asking is how would you be able to go ahead and get more participation within certain groups? So my question to fit yours is how would you be able to go ahead and move people that align within your certain ideology or follow you? How would you be able to go ahead and get them to participate in said movements or any movements really?
So basically your question is how do we take it out of the conversation and make it real, sort of?
Yeah, application of it.
Yeah, so the application. So that's a great question, and that's sort of. I'm glad this is the last question.
Your fan base too.
Yeah, there you go. All right, wait. Which Nick, Anthony? If I like you, is that what you told me?
Yeah, Anthony or Nick, whichever one you prefer.
All right, we'll go with Anthony here. Well, it's a great question because everyone just talks, right? Like, so we did a little talk here. Everyone, you turn on TV, everyone's just talking about everything. I do an interview show. We're talking, right? But how do you move an idea just from like this thing that we do back and forth with each other into the real world? And I think it goes back to what I started with is this is where we need you guys. That I'm just one guy that happens to be doing this. And by getting some of these ideas out there, I've seen movement. I've seen people become a little less hysterical. I've seen people that want to rush to judgment all the time and pretend they know everything all the time. I've seen them moderate. I've also seen, one of the things that I say all the time is stop giving politicians all your money. Everyone, whether you like Bernie or you like Trump or you like Hillary, it's like, how about we starve all of them until the point that they become beholden to us again? And I think that's one way to do it. Because if there's one thing that politicians respond to, it's money. So stop giving them your money, first off, and let's see what they'll do without your money. You know, the whole thing of a politician now is that you just run, you win, and then you start running the next day. That cannot go on anymore. But also in terms of application, I think for you guys, it's important to do exactly what you're doing. Just don't be afraid to tell your friends what they think. Don't be afraid that if you say something, and it might be a little out of the group think that the left is pushing down everyone's throat these days, don't think that makes you evil. You know, the words that they use all the time, they're intended to do the most damage, because nobody wants to be called a racist or a bigot or a homophobe or an Islamophobe or any of these things. Nobody wants to. So the reason they do it is because that substitutes for an argument. It's hard to have an argument with somebody. It takes brain power to sit there with somebody and have a real intellectual, I respect you, you respect me, let's do this, you know, and then by the way, walk away and still be okay with each other. I have 3 of my best friends since childhood, one of them since I'm 4 years old. We've got a group text going, and whenever we see each other, we scream and fight about politics. One of them's a big Trump guy, one of them is a big Bernie guy. You know, I'm in the middle more as a liberal and a libertarian, and it's like, you gotta be okay with at the end going, all right, well, all right, we think different things. You know, you're still a decent person. So putting it into action is saying what you think relentlessly. The worst, in a way, the people that give me shit all the time or fight with me on Twitter or post videos about me or whatever, I don't mind them. Not that I would prefer they don't do it, but okay, they're exercising their free speech. The people that actually, the ones that kind of hurt are the people that tell me they've been silenced. And they're silencing themselves. Oh, I'm afraid to lose my job, or oh, I don't want to deal with this or that. So the most important thing you can do, before we get to all the political part of like eventually maybe trying to take hold of the Libertarian Party, you know, they're on the ballot. We could grab it. Any of you guys, the party is such a mess. Any of you could be president the candidate at least, probably in 2020. You know, people want me to do it. I don't think that's gonna happen. But fight for what you believe. Fight for what you believe, and don't be scared into silence. Because think about it, if you guys think that free speech is tenuous right now, or you think that the ideas that you care about are struggling right now, and if you think we're kind of losing this war, even though we've had a couple nice wins lately, if you think we're losing, what do you think it's going to be like in 5 years if enough of you don't say anything? It will be worse. I think you know the answer. It will be worse. So that's the number one thing, and you have the power to do that right now, tomorrow. Like, I'm sure you're on Twitter. And, you know, like, get your ideas out there, because that's the only way that we can take this thing back.
Would I be able to probably hit you up on Twitter?
Yeah, I'm on the Twitter. I don't know if I'll see it, but my Twitter is completely insane. My mentions, I actually, at the end of the day, I print out all my mentions and then I wipe my ass with them. But
I mean, I was going to try to put something clever so you could find it. But I mean, either way, still do that, because I mean, knowing that you would use that for one of your body parts.
Well, I'll keep an eye out for it. And on the weekends, it's a little slower because people generally come down on the weekends. So I'll keep my eyes open for it. But really, that's what we need. We need people like you to get out there. That's it. That's it. The other stuff about, okay, we're going to take over the Republican Party, we're going to take over the Democratic Party, or we're going to form our own party. All that will come, but it only comes by eventually getting this thing to critical mass. And that's what's so cool about you guys getting your news from hopefully people like me and some of these other guys that you've seen here, because we can get there, but we can only do it together. That's a true movement. But we need you. We really need you.
Yeah. That was a really nice answer. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Rubin, for joining us. I hope to see you in October.
Yeah.
And, can we get a quick round of applause for him? And a quick thing, Phantom Menace was the best Star Wars. All right, have a good day.